All right, welcome to the Sweet Talk. Good evening. Today is Thursday, March 12th, 2020, and I am your host, Kim Matina. I am a Google certified trainer, a Google certified educator, gold product expert for the Google for Education team, and a technology teacher. And today I'm very happy to have on the show Dr. Micah Shippee. He is a social studies teacher, and he has so many more credentials. I'm going to let him introduce himself in a minute. But welcome to the show, Micah.
Hi, Kim. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to speak with you today.
Yeah, I mean, we were trying to catch up a few months ago, and things and life got in the way. So I'm glad that we are connected now. And we have a common friend, Jesse. Shout out
Oh,
to
yeah,
Jesse, right?
of course.
Um, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and, just, tell everybody what you're doing because I know you've been
Sure.
busy.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I wear a few hats. I'm in year number 20, finishing year number 20 as a middle school social studies teacher. So I'm in the classroom. I also have the privilege of serving as the CEO for a company called Ready Learner One. It's an immersive technology company working in both the education and the corporate spaces to help individuals and organizations leverage emergent technology to achieve instructional goals. With my K2 hat on, I'm also a Google certified trainer and innovator. I've done some work with the National Geographic team as a teacher and educator. And I also work with the Google Earth for Education team as well, and a whole lot of other things in between. Typically, about once a month, I'm somewhere in North America working with educators who are interested in new strategies for adopting new technologies and better ways to prepare students for their future.
Yeah, that is wow, that's a lot. I don't know. It just seems like the more people I talk to, who are educators, they wear all these other hats, and it just grows like you just can't stop. It's like addictive.
Sure,
you know.
absolutely.
So yeah, so I'm glad to have you on today. I know we're going to talk about grouping students strategy so that they can acquire work skills that they're going to need for their future. And like we were talking before, like this is an important topic as well with the crisis that we're all dealing with um, right now in worldwide, basically with the coronavirus.
Mhm.
Schools closing and different things closing down, and remote learning going on. So like this is a nice generalized topic that
Yeah.
everyone now can relate to. So why don't you give us a little bit of insight on grouping students? What's your strategy and what are some of the outcomes that you're seeing with your middle school students?
Yeah. So for many years, decades now, I guess, I've been grouping students. And up until literally the last 18 months, before that, all of my grouping was done by whoever was in front of me in a class period. So in the class period, I would put pairs together, groups of threes. What I often found in my classroom is as the group got larger, less work was done by individuals, which of course is not good academically, but also we have one or two students who would perhaps have a bigger personality and more interest in their academics take all the work on.
They're
So
dominant.
yeah, they were dominating. So the learning tasks were not evenly distributed by all the students. And I years ago stopped grading group work and would grade students individually on their contributions to a group.
Yep, we have some technical difficulties here. Hold on. I think I just lost you. Can you hear me?
Yes, how am I on now?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
you got choppy there, and then your audio went out.
Oh,
So you were
sorry.
so you were saying that you grouped students academically,
Well,
but then you couldn't grade them that way because they were dominate other students would dominate the work in the group.
I would heterogeneously group them, but the students who are more concerned about grades would kind of take on all the tasks and do it themselves. So there were students who, even if they wanted to contribute, it wasn't and equitable opportunity. So I made some decisions about group work for many, more recently about downsizing the physical kids in front of me, how big those groups were. So that led to a new project. So last June, or May actually, May of 2019, Google reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in inviting a film crew into my classroom to show how the new Google Earth creation tools worked. So many of us have been using Google My Maps and Tour Builder and Google Tour Creator, really awesome geo-based tools that have been finding a home increasingly in one place, and that's Google Earth. So the film crew came in, and now I had to decide, how am I going to do this? Am I going to do it with all 125 students? It didn't really seem too manageable. So I selected my 20 broadcast students, because I also, one of my fun jobs that I volunteer to do during the school year is I teach a broadcast team, and we do live morning announcements. Now, live morning announcements with 8th graders, right? So I'm either nuts or brave, or somewhere in between that, perhaps.
Both.
So this group of students, they were spread out through all my classes, and I brought them together once a day to work on this Google project. And what I was finding is the project was really cool, and I'll put the notes in our Wakelet later on. But it was really neat to have students who normally didn't sit next to each other in class all of a sudden working. And so this disruption in my workflow and in their workflow, centered around my social studies content, it was kind of inspiring. I'm like, well, how else can I do this? So I started to think more about what was going on with students and why this was interesting to me. It's got to be more than just a novelty. So I did a little bit of a research dive, because I'm a bit of a geek. And I've written 2 books. My first book is Wanderlust EDU. In that book, I talk about why we adopt new technology and the relationship of technology and innovation in the classroom. And one of the conclusions in the book is how the workforce is shifting. And so what we're finding with the workforce shift is that we're increasingly getting into what's called a gig-based economy, where people work from gig to gig. It sounds like a music industry word. But the idea is that you're an expert in an area, and you contribute to a team that you may or may not see using your expertise, and then you move on to another team still using your expertise. So this kind of, it's interesting,
kind of
because
like short-term work goals for that project.
Yes, and the predictions for the future of work globally, because of this effort we call globalization, where people from all over the world are contributing to one project, we're seeing that this workforce is now distributed. So rather than having people sit in an office together or in a conference room together to do work, people are doing work at home and contributing to a team. So it's synchronous, but it's also asynchronous, but geographically it's dispersed. And so if I'm thinking about my students' future, not my past, right? It's tough as a teacher you rely on your past successes, but that's not really what your students' future is always. So when I'm thinking about my students' future, is how can I help them get this idea of contributing to a team that isn't physically meeting? So this past fall, I did a project with a local cemetery, where I had my students do a little bit of research about the cemetery, do some geolocation tagging, write some timelines, take some photos, and we were going to contribute to a Google site. So the students had different jobs. So my period 1 class, I gave the job of creating a timeline around one person. My period 3 class had the job of writing a biographical sketch about one person. My period 4 created slideshows from the photos. My period 7 created a short movie about what life was like while a person was alive. And then my last period class, their only job was to serve as project managers. And so
all on the same topic, all the same gig, right?
Well, there were 20 or 25 different grave sites. And so period 1 has 24 or 25 students. Okay. Right? So throughout the day, everybody was working on their one task around one topic. And at the end of the day, my last period class, their job was to review the work of the day and tag students on what needed to be done the next time they came to class. And they never saw each other. So at the end of it, we put it all together into a Google site. And the Google site represents people who were alive during the history that I teach in class in our local cemetery. So I was hoping that a little community connection would inspire the students as well. We walked to the cemetery. It's a 10 or 15-minute walk. So they all had their own little personal connection with this project, but it was only a piece of a larger whole. So as a teacher, with my period 1 class, I focused on teaching them skills for creating a timeline. Here's a timeline tool, kids. Let's go into this tool and be the experts on creating a timeline only. Then my next class, we worked on writing a paragraph about what would have happened while this person was alive. And I taught them tools for editing. One of my favorite is called HemingwayApp.com. One of my favorite. It's kind of like a Grammarly type thing. And taught them about writing clearly and writing at appropriate grade levels. And then my period 4, they were the slideshow people. So I worked with them on creating good slideshows that could meaningfully communicate a message. And then my period 7, we went into Adobe Spark Video and we created little short videos around a person's time. And then again, the period 9, I taught them about tagging and assigning people to do work through Google Slides. And found that to be a pretty meaningful tool.
That's pretty cool, actually. I like that.
Well, the project itself, the end project is a typical middle school project. So I'm not going to pretend it's the most amazing website ever created. But the work the students did in the process is what inspired me. I actually wrote down a couple of quotes from the kids afterwards. I surveyed them. So one of them says, the title of the prompt was the thing I learned about this the biggest thing I learned about this type of group work is, and here's how they responded. Biggest thing they learned. You have to rely on all your classmates. If your classmates didn't do the work properly, it affects you because you don't know the answer. You have to be in communication with all your team members so you understand fully what each teammate expects from each other.
Yeah. Another
one wrote, you rely on your partners a lot, and when they don't do their job like you did yours, it's disappointing and it throws the whole project off. And finally,
wow.
isn't this great?
I'm impressed.
It's very genuine too, very genuine. And
well, that's all they are at that age.
Yeah. How people can indirectly help you on certain things, creating this chain of other people's work, helping someone else's work to create something special.
Wow.
And I thought that was neat. But now, to be fair and to give a truly authentic voice, I had one student say, the biggest thing I learned is it can be, in all caps, agonizingly painful when only one person does their work. All I got from everyone was nothing except for one student. I got a timeline after it was due and it wasn't able to put it on the website. One person was sick, so I cut her some slack. However, I never got wind of any slideshows. I can understand why teachers get so angry when we don't do our work. It is so frustrating and it makes me want to scream. Only one student was turning in their work to me on time and did a nice job.
Well, maybe he'll grow up to be an educator.
But I mean, there's an adult group work concept that the students are learning through effort and through this process. And the end result is one thing, but the social dynamic of working in a distributed workforce environment, I believe my students are going to be doing more of that in the future.
Yeah, I agree. Well, so let me ask you this. So your period 1 class, they were working on a timeline, and all the kids just worked on like one timeline, or did they have a specific timeline for a specific person?
Yes, each kid had one person they were creating a timeline for.
Okay.
Different person.
Okay, so in that class, they were working independently?
Yes.
So then you paired up student A in period 1 with student A in period 2. Is
correct?
That what you did?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. But they never saw each other.
They never saw each other because they're not in the same class. So then how did they communicate? What did they use? Did they use Google Classroom? So you know what I mean? Did they exchange phone numbers, text? Yeah. What they do?
It was all communicated through a shared Google slide deck.
Okay.
So the Google slide deck was their palette of Post-its and all this stuff put into one place. It's a completely paperless project.
All the kids did that, or did so all the kids collaborated in a Google slide deck?
Yeah. So there were 25 Google slide decks. each one representing one topic from the cemetery.
Okay. Now, was that your idea or was that the student's idea?
Yeah, it was my idea. That was my idea on how to do this. The first time and the second time through, I did some design decisions about workflow to help them because I knew it would be very foreign to them.
And was that the first time that they collaborated in a Google slide deck?
Yes. Well, I mean, they've been in many classes, and we had these conversations where, we'll give them a slide deck. I have a poem I love called Harlem, about the Harlem Renaissance, and I'll cut the poem up into pieces and give it to the class and give each student the responsibility of annotating or graphically representing what's in the poem. And so when I do that, and with the students in front of me, the problem might be where a student will click apply all to a background or a theme, and it will mess up the whole classroom. So when we're doing something that's asynchronous, more like this distributed workflow, that kind of thing doesn't happen.
Okay. Because, I'm trying to change the workflow in my classroom and influence other teachers, because remember, I push in to different subject areas. So I try to make things a little different, shake things up a little bit instead of collaborating in a Google Doc or have the kids use a Google Doc. I have them use a Google slide deck, and it throws them off because they're not used to that. They're so used to working in a document.
Yeah.
And when I say, okay, no, we're going to use the slide deck, and you're going to have one slide for each step, and you're going to document it in there. It takes them a few minutes to get used to that concept, because they're so used to it's just, and I explained to them, it's just another app. It's just another way of doing it, just so
Right.
you're exposed to it. That's why I asked you that question, because it's a different learning style. It's in a different way of presenting the work, and they're so grained into using Docs or Microsoft Word for everything. So that's why I asked that question. So that's cool. Oh, wow. I really like that. And
So
it's nice that you connected it to the community too.
yeah.
So, so it's kind of like a PBL project as well.
Sure. Yeah. So that was my first full-time doing it with all of my 125 students.
And how long did that take to do?
It was about a week. It was a week worth of work to do. I wouldn't say it was more efficient in getting a job done fast, but that wasn't the point.
Right.
The process to me was the most important thing. The product was very much secondary or farther down the line than that.
That was your goal. So you were satisfied with that, right?
Yeah. So then our next time through and our last time through, I did it again in January, so just a month and a half ago. We did a project around World War I, and this time I connected with a technology teacher that I work with who does an iMovie unit every year. So I asked him, can the students all make a movie around certain topics? So this time there were only 13 topics, and can they build off of that and then bring it into my class on World War I? So again, distributed workforce. They happen to be in a different class, but then they come to me, and again, broke them up by 5 different class periods for what their jobs would be to build a Google Earth story. Now, I'd like to share my screen and show you what that looks like. It's actually pretty cool.
Okay.
Okay, is that up there okay?
Yes.
All right, sweet. So I'll click present here. Well, actually, over here on the side these are all the items added by the students. So in this particular project, I wanted it to be a little bit heavier focused on research. So I taught students about using Apogee 2, which is my favorite citation tool. It's a Google Chrome extension. It allows them to capture an MLA citation from a website. So I wanted them to use that, and also to plot geolocation and add primary sources where they were relevant. So when I click present here, she'll pull up a collage. The students, one of the groups made a collage of World War I themes. And as we tab through, you'll see that the Earth spins and it takes us to some geolocations associated with World War I. So this was neat because, plotting the point, doing the research about where this assassination took place was a job. Making a biographical sketch or a sketch of the event was the job. We have students who are citing their text-based sources as well as their image sources. And this is 125 kids contributing to one Google Earth story. Here are images students found, and then the video that they created to go with it. And this is for one, and there were 13 different topics. This one here, you see students start to use Google Earth a little more with colors and outlines and shapes added to it, talking about the Axis and Allied powers. Again, images added, and all of it was cited on the right-hand side with a little bit of storyline about what was happening with it.
So you said there was 13 topics?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so how did you distribute that through all of your classes?
So this
before?
Same concept as before, but this time, since my class sizes are larger, I actually paired students. So 2 people in my first period class were working on the same one.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, it's not always as clean as one for every kid.
Yeah, no. But this is nice because I like how I I like how you used, first of all, Google Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're using it as a presentation tool to gather the information about World War One, and then it's nice to know the behind the scenes on how you group the kids, because a lot of thought has to go into this for it to look the way it does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's actually has a nice flow to it.
Yeah, and I gave them some time to play with Google Earth. We set one class period, a 40-minute class period, to visit the Google Earth Voyager stories, to look at how things are laid out. We made some group decisions about the knowledge card being a full one side. I had a conversation with the project managers. I said, what do you think? What do you want to tell your Google Earth builders to do? Do you like this full side? I said, should we be uniform? Should they all be different? And so the palette of text and visual on the side, the color of the geometric shapes that were created, that was all part of the conversation and the communication done in class with people that they didn't see. Makes it pretty cool.
Again, and they used a Google slide deck to collaborate.
This time it was a Google Doc. So
okay.
this time, and the last one, I liked Google Slides, but I was worried it was getting a little too complicated. So I said to the students, let's just try a Google Doc because it's a little cleaner and blank, and we'll just see if you'll like it. It's a form of experiment, right?
Right.
I'm hoping that they're learning what workflow works for them best. And hopefully in the future, they'll be able to just pick their own. This particular time, I did switch, who the project manager was, which class period. So a different group of students got to play with that concept of being a project manager.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so this was a great project. This one, I'm very excited about how it came out. I think it looks great. I did have one of the classes go through it and write some questions on a Google form to create some kind of little formative assessment for World War I, so everybody felt like they were reading each other's work. Otherwise, they wouldn't invest the time. So I wanted to keep them honest to make sure they were looking at it.
Now, let me ask you this question. So just say you had, so for the last project that you did, you said you had kids doing a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had kids doing like a presentation or a movie or whatnot. Did you switch the kids up in the second project so that they were exposed to different
yes
responsibilities? Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the students who wrote the biographical sketch in the fall, they probably would have killed me if I made them do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, because they don't want
with more interactive media. So I did alternate, and my project managers, which their number one job was only to communicate, that was a different group this time.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow, this is great, Mike. I'm glad that you came on and shared, because it gives me and you're at the same grade level as I am. So just showing me this really opened up and gave me a lot of ideas that I can use for next year with social studies teachers, because honestly, this year we used Google Tour Builder
Sure.
with the seventh and eighth grade social studies teachers, and now with the new update with Google Earth, it would have been nice to been able to use that.
Yeah.
We that didn't come out until after we started using Tour Builder, so I wasn't gonna switch after,
I hear you. I,
you
I
know.
initially I initially had planned my fall project, the cemetery project, to be a Google Earth project. But Google Earth, like YouTube and Tour Creator, they're listed as additional services by Google. So since they're not core, my particular school district chose an opt-in strategy, which is that's a slower strategy to get permission slips. So
Okay.
every single kid has to have a letter signed to use YouTube and to use Google Earth creation tools. So that provided a challenge that I wasn't ready for in the fall. So I had to pivot, and that's why we did a Google site, which was fun. It came out great. But really, what I wanted was what you just saw with the World War I project. So I was excited to have that opportunity this January.
Now, can you share that project in the Wakelet just so I can
Mhm.
share it
Yeah,
with
yeah, I'll share it.
teachers at
Absolutely.
my school? Because I think that's like, because what we did this year was the seventh and eighth grade social studies teachers, they had to create, I called it like a map it out project,
Mhm.
where they had to, excuse me, they had to find locations in the chapter of their book and document it in a Google slide deck.
Mhm.
And then they actually took that information and put it into Tour Builder. So by the end of the school year, they would have like maybe 30 to 40 place marks in their tour. And then they would be able to see, where they were studying around the
Mhm.
world. And, eighth grade social studies curriculum is different than seventh grade.
Right.
So eighth grade was more in the United States, and seventh grade is worldwide. So
Okay.
seventh grade to me is a little bit more, um, you know, visual, because you're actually
Sure.
traveling further away.
Mhm.
Um, but the kids like it. They like it. They're engaged. Um, but when the new version of Google Earth came out, we were already into the Tour Builder
Sure.
application. And I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
not changing now, but next year we can do it. you know?
The the other one that I have not used yet with my students, but I have used myself, is Tour Creator. And so Tour Creator lets students make their own Google expeditions. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah,
So
I've used that as well, but not with my students.
yeah,
Yeah, that'll be the next hurdle to go over.
me too. That's going to be my next one. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Well, oh my goodness, Micah, this was great. I'm so glad that you came on and shared this, because when people think of like a presentation, they think of a Google slide deck or
Mhm.
PowerPoint, and we have to like shift our mindset, like get the kids involved and doing and using different tools to represent their information,
Mhm.
movies, video, even geo tools. So I'm glad that you actually showed your example, and it was a wonderful example, and I
Thank you.
thank you for that.
Yeah, and the workflow shift I think is really kind of neat. We're at a place right now with the sicknesses going around coronavirus. There's concern about having to work remotely, and unfortunately that hasn't happened in my school yet. But I'm thinking, boy, it'd be kind of cool to meet with small groups and have that small group be an expert and have it contribute to a larger project. So that shift that I've done face to face with my students through the school year. It may be beneficial for me to try that if we go to this again shift in workflow or
Yeah,
classroom.
I agree. I think well, you're not doing, like, you're exposing them to something different, like the same content, but they're working with somebody that they don't interact with during your class. So it's actually a nice change of
Mm-hmm.
pace. And like you said, like for them to collaborate online and get the information and work together and communicate, like that's all part of 21st century skills. That's
Sure.
all
Mm-hmm.
part of the 4 C's of education. So, but for you to even, like, because how it is, like when you're in class, you just group kids together because
Sure.
you have no time. Like you actually put a
I know.
lot of thought into creating the groups for each or a topic in
Mhm.
for each class. So I think the strategy that you used behind that was really well thought out. And if you think about it, it does connect with the future of the work skills that they're going to
Mhm.
need.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna tr-
Cool.
I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna, see how it goes. I won't use like a big scale project, but I could certainly zone in on a smaller one and see how the kids react to it, and
Mhm.
I'll let you know.
And you
And
can
you get
start the way I
started.
start. The way I start any project like that is like, look, kids, this might fail miserably. And some will groan and some are like, okay, but I just tell them that. Let's see
Yeah,
what's going to happen. If it
let's see
fails,
what
I'll stop it.
happens.
Yeah.
We'll learn together as we go through
Right.
it.
Nothing wrong with
Exactly.
that. Nothing
Nope.
wrong with that.
Not at all. But I like that. So I'm gonna present it to one of the teachers,
Cool.
see what happens because we're just starting a new project, so you never know.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong, right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your new book that came out too?
Sure. I've got it right here. How do you like that shameless plug in my background? This is Reality Bites. I co authored this with Christine Lyon Bailey and Jesse Lubinsky. This book is all about augmented and virtual reality in the classroom. It's full of teacher stories, real practical examples of people who are using these new emergent tools. And the idea is how can it help inform a pedagogy shift for all of us? Because using a new tool and relying on the laurels of past successes isn't always going to work. It's the idea that technology amplifies good instruction. It also amplifies areas that need some work.
Yeah.
We think the stories in here will be inspiring. We know, you write a book like this, and right away, if there's tools in here you're writing about, some of those tools are going to be outdated or expired. But the tools are secondary. It's a learning first book, and it's about new strategies for approaching tech. In the book, we have augmented reality experiences that use no app. It's called Web AR. It's a new technology that streams augmented reality experiences that pop right off the page using something like your own phone camera. So we're excited about how the book's been received. We think of it as the what for adopting emergent technology. I like to think of Wanderlust EDU as the why.
Awesome. All right. Well, I told you I'm going to buy the book.
Sweet.
So definitely, I'm going to go to Amazon and get that. So thanks for sharing that, Micah.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. So that concludes our show tonight. I hope that you found it helpful because I really did. I found it very interesting, and I'm certainly going to try his strategies. So, with that said, let me share my screen and wrap up the show. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So if you go to thesuitetalk.com, that's the SUITE talk.com, you'll come up to the homepage and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, join my Facebook group, subscribe to the newsletter. I'm also on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Google Podcasts. The latest episode will be here on the homepage. If you would like to be a guest on my show, please fill out the guest form and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Right now, I'm scheduling for the summer. So I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah.
Um, there's trending episodes on here as well. You can also find past episodes if you go to the episode page. All of the episodes and show notes will be listed here as well. And the podcast list will be here too from Podbean. My Jamboard resources are here on the Jamboard page. You can check out my idea board for Jamboard. It's a Wakelet collection and different ways you can use Jamboard. Google Classroom. Alice Keeler and I wrote a new book. It's called Stepping Up to Google Classroom. It's a beginner guide, 50 steps for beginners to get started. And if you'd like to stay up to date on when that's going to come out, you can subscribe to her newsletter here. But it should be out by the end of June around ISTE.
Awesome.
Yeah, so with that said, let me come back, and that's it. So, well, thank you, Micah, again. It was a pleasure finally
Thank
meeting
you.
you. And I will be in touch and letting you know how my experiment goes with what with what the ideas I have from you from your idea. So thank you
Awesome.
for sharing. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Kim.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.